listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Week 8 preview for Monday, October 21st, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
Rolling right along, another week of NFL action on the way. We always give you the first look at the numbers. We turn to our global expert, our odds maker, Jack, to dive into these numbers in our first glance. Just another weekend, Jack. Just some crazy stuff all across the board. I mean, that Chargers game, replay after replay after replay, they couldn't decide the game. And, you know, the number is on the line. I mean, the sports books, people watching that game, it just had to be shaking their head.
Sure, that's aggravating. So San Diego's season was probably on the line. They go to 2-4. I mean, I know it's the right thing is to get the call right, but they got to come up with a way to fix this. I mean, I'm sure this turns a lot of fans off when it takes 10 minutes to play the last 30 seconds of a game with no timeouts. Oh,
it does. Believe me, I was in a room with about 200 people, and the murmuring and cursing and yelling and screaming, it was a circus act. But nonetheless, the one thing that is a constant, and that are the numbers as we dive ahead and look forward. And we appreciate you doing this each and every week. And we start with Washington at Minnesota. And, you know, we're looking at this Thursday night game here with a total of, 41.5 mixed bag. The Vikings have got their act together. What was your thinking here? What'd you open?
We opened 14 on Saturday, put it up. I opened it up again last night after the games were over at 16, and now it's 16. The dog's some money.
Well, Cousins is rolling. He's going to be going against his old mates. The one question, and he's a terrific player, but he wouldn't really factor into the spread. But Thielen's absence wouldn't help Minnesota. But clearly, they've got a two-headed running back at Monster. If they impose their will at the line, that's kind of where this game begins and ends, doesn't it?
I think that's a big improvement from Minnesota this year is the offensive line compared to last year. And you're right, the loss of Thielen is not to be underrated. But this is just a class differential. I think the number hangs here. It goes to 14, they'll lay it. Goes to 17, they'll take it. And so we'll bounce in between 15.5 and 16.5.
Is it tough to gauge Washington? The game with the Niners, that was like played on a hockey rink. I mean, that was a goofball game in the rain. The field was a mess. You're basically going back to what you'd seen before last week, because, I mean, there wasn't much to gain from that game yesterday, was there?
No, not at all. I mean, basically, if you can remember that and put it in your memory bank, you go over their games and you throw it out because of the weather conditions.
You know, the one thing with Cousins, and I get the big number here, although he's like I said, he's got his act together. This is the kind of game the guy goes and puts up like video game numbers, right, against an inferior opponent.
It is, but actually Washington, throw yesterday out, I like we said, because of the weather, but their defense hasn't been all that bad. Defensively, this team is giving up more points than they should. They're giving up 25.1 points against, but that's basically because their offense stinks. Yeah. Their offense is putting up 13, terrible field position. I think the defense has played remarkably well. If they had an offense with them, I think this could be a 500 ball club.
Well, you read my mind there, and it's such an intangible. And it's a much broader discussion. Maybe we did touch on this in the summer months, but there are two things that are such intangible things that I don't think factor into the number. I mean, I think a coach should be worth something for starters. But if a team is constantly losing the field position battle, and it's hard to predict turnovers, but if a team is constantly winning the turnover battle, these are things that just add up to victories and covers when you're betting on or against them.
Oh, you're 100% right. I mean, that's a definite, and Washington is suffering from that.
All right, sir, let's move on. The Giants and Detroit. The Lions laying 7. Total is 48.5. Giants come up short against Arizona. I know we had talked about that game last week. Thought that Arizona-Giants game was actually going to be quite entertaining. Giants came roaring back, but it's just, when you get a young quarterback, sometimes you run hot and cold. And Detroit's playing really good football. they just run into a tough schedule and have left some games, some wins on the table. They've got to be frustrated.
Oh, if you look at Detroit this year, I mean, they had Kansas City beat at home. They had Green Bay beat on Monday night. There were a couple of very questionable referee calls on grabbing the face mask when the guy never touched it. 2 on third down on the final drive that made them lose that game. So, yeah, they could be very improved. Their record could easily be above 500 instead of sitting at 2-3-1. And through blowing an 18-point lead in the opener in the fourth quarter, this team could easily be sitting at 4-2.
Oh, Jack, I mean, we talked about that Packers thing, and it's revisionist history. But the impact of that game and those calls, that it impacted that entire division. And here are the Lions, who were feeling their oats, coming off a bye, and all of a sudden, I mean, they made their own bet in some stupid things, but they should have won that game. They should have won the Chiefs game. But all of a sudden, Green Bay, 6-1, they're 2-3-1. 2 weeks ago, they're sitting there thinking they got a real shot to win the division.
Sure, right? I mean, we would take Green Bay would be 5-2, and as I said, this team could be 4-2, and you'd have a race there. But naturally, it's over now. And then Green Bay lucks into going to Kansas City this week with Mahomes out.
All right, this is an interesting one. Let's see what the odds makers are thinking with Tampa Bay at Tennessee. Tennessee is, we're seeing 2.5s and 3s that are out there, 46.5. Let's just get your thoughts on where you open this.
Okay, first we opened it at 3 on Tennessee. Then last night when we reopened it, it was 2.5. And we moved it to 2, the favorite, a little money this morning, based on Tampa Bay coming off the bye. Tennessee played a tough game, but they were 3 over the LA Chargers. And then Tampa Bay with rest has to be equal to them, and they easily could have lost that game yesterday. Chargers are just a team that can't take advantage of anything they're given. So and it's less than 3, but Tennessee's the favorite.
Let me ask you, what have you done on Tennessee specifically with this 3-4 record? But I will say they got a terrific running back, and I think that offensive line is just a disaster because they can't get Henry on track. But they look night and day different, better. I mean, they're not a video game offense, but with Tannehill in there, they look a little dangerous. They didn't with Tannehill.
And Tannehill has had many good games in the past with Miami, but I think he's had more bad games than good games. And I think that will resurface in this case, especially with a bad offensive line.
All right. And generally speaking, Jack, the bye itself, coming off a bye, obviously it depends on the team and then the venue. But generally speaking, what do you think a team coming off the bye is? What, is it a point and a half?
I would say that. I would say in this case where we had them just off numbers of 3, depending on performance, I think you cut it to 2 the next day. It's worth a point. I mean, you can't go to pick, so it's worth a point. Now, if it had been like a 10, maybe it becomes an 8.5 or an 8. So depending on the spread would be the percentage of how much you're going to take it down. A 14-point favorite might go to 11.
Okay. No, it's always something you got to take into account. Let's move on to an interconference game here. I had a conference game, rather. The Chargers and Chicago, and 2 teams that have to be pretty dispirited getting ready for this game.
Yes, it is. I mean, the Chargers have to be heartbroken after yesterday's game. The Bears were dismantled by the Saints. I don't think they expected that. They were coming off a bye and put up a terrible performance, and they have to have some questions about their quarterback position. Trubisky, again, looked bad yesterday. I thought he was going to be coming into his own this year, and obviously I was wrong. The Chicago defense actually got handled a little by what has been a mediocre offense so far with New Orleans, with Bridgewater at quarterback. And plus, this game is placed at, we opened this game at 4.5. It's up to 5.5. There are some 5s out there. This should be a tough game and hang right around there. It's tough to anticipate how the Chargers are going to take it coming off that loss, which dropped them to 2-4. And as we said before, could really hurt their chances for the season.
I don't think you can trust either one of these teams, but in that 5.5 range, Jack, that's that volatile area where once it goes, it could go a little bit. Would you envision professional money? Probably. If you can't trust either team, you take the dog.
I would anticipate it coming down if it did anything.
Yeah, that's what if you can't trust either one, the pros will probably side with the dogs. Here's one. Seattle is at Atlanta, and wow, let's give Baltimore some credit because they walked up into the Great Northwest and thumped Seattle. It's one thing to go up there and win a game, but to really just beat up Seattle in their backyard, that was pretty impressive. Now Seattle goes on the road against an Atlanta team that just can't get out of their own way. What did you have Saturday? And now Matt Ryan limped off the field. They said he walked out of the locker room with a boot. He's going to have an MRI. They say it's not serious, but what his status would be. What's a Ryan in and a Ryan out number?
Well, Seattle was 3 when we posted it Saturday. Then after the games last night, everything taken into consideration, if Atlanta was healthy, Seattle would probably be 3.5 or 4. Now with Ryan out, that's probably in the minds of the people that I spoke to, probably a 4.5 point difference. So you'd be looking at over a touchdown here with Seattle.
Wow. Okay, there you go. I think Seattle still got a chance to be something, but that was an alarming performance. Was it more a knock against Seattle, or does it upgrade Baltimore the way that game played out?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. Somebody is going to have to adjust because Jackson does they're running Jackson so much in that Baltimore offense. And you see when he gets one-on-one, he shakes the first defender every time, runs smartly, gets down. Someone's going to have to come up with a defense to stop that. So I would say it's a plus for Baltimore. I would say Seattle is what we thought they were going in. Actually, the Baltimore defense played better than I thought they would against Wilson.
All right, then this one, points should be at a premium in this one. The Jets at Jacksonville. Where did you open? Where do you sit? And then how instantaneous might the reaction be based on, hey, if the Jets look good against New England, could this number actually get towards the key number of 3?
Right. Well, we opened at 5.5. It was bet down to 4.5. I think because the two, as we spoke about last week, the 2 games that Darnold played for the Jets, they beat Dallas and they lost a tough game to Buffalo. Nothing to sneeze at there. So it's sitting at 5.5 now, depending on tonight's game. Sitting at 4.5. If the Jets were to look good, I think it goes down to 3.5. If they put up a stinker, then it could go as high as 6.
All right, this is an intriguing game. Philly is at Buffalo. Just tell me what your thought was. What'd you hang here, and then we'll dive into it.
We opened Buffalo 2.5. It was bet down to 1. We opened up 1.5 after last night's game, and this really is an interesting one to watch. Before the season started, you never would have expected this. You would have thought Philly would be 3 or more on the road. But Philly hasn't looked good the last few weeks. Buffalo, a little shaky against Miami. I don't want to get you scared, Brian, but that first half had me nervous and a lot of survivor pools. So the Philadelphia Buffalo is 1.5. I think it actually might slide up to 2.5.
Yeah, the Dolphins game, when Ryan Fitzpatrick was named the starter, I told anybody who listened, I said, oh boy, look out. This guy's got, he's got the 1 or 2 good games in him that can scare you. The one thing I'd say about the Bills, even when they face this kind of stuff, at the end of games, Josh Allen is phenomenal at bringing this team back. They don't panic, and he gets his act together, and then the offense or the defense was good enough at the end of the game. But I think they were a little off kilter coming off the bye. I don't think it helped them. Plus, it was Miami. I mean, they shouldn't be taking anybody lightly. But Philly, man, they got walloped by the Cowboys. Sunday night game, their season's rapidly approaching, game on the line here.
But yeah, this will be make or break for Philly. I mean, if they lose this one, as you talked about last week, losing that game was like losing 2 games to Dallas. That division is basically over. Now they have to set their sights on either miraculous comeback in that division or at least making a wild card. And this game will go a long way towards it. If you said who was backed into a corner more, it would obviously be Philadelphia. And Buffalo did get lucky with that. After they faked that 4th down and got a first and goal, Ryan came right back with his old stuff, Fitzpatrick, and threw that interception.
Well, here, buddy, just for giggles as an aside, everybody under the sun, we always talk about the bad beats, the horrible beat. Nobody ever talks about the lucky win. When Fitzpatrick was playing, I played the over in a game. 17 was way too much. But when the Bills were behind, I played the Bills minus 8.5 in the second half, and they're up. They've got it covered. Fitzpatrick breaks a tackle, a 20-yard run. All of a sudden, so now it's an 8-point spread in the second half. Basically, Buffalo gets the onside kick. They're going to kneel down. Buffalo gets the onside kick and returns it for a touchdown. I mean, that is the miracle win of a bet of all time. But there are a lot of people on the other side who go, and that's the worst beat they ever had. All we ever do is talk about the bad beats. I got the lucky win. So that's the nature of what we do every week, talking about this stuff.
That's good. There were some people that lost. We opened that second half 10, and they jumped at plus 10 with Buffalo, and it was a tough defeat.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. All right, Cincinnati and the Rams. Oh, boy. Cincinnati, another long season for these guys. And this number's on the rise. What do you got?
We have 13.5 dog money. Probably 13 is the universal number out there. A little 12.5. I can only see this game going up. It looked like the Rams got their act together. Not that I can say they did that at Atlanta, because Atlanta played so poorly yesterday, as they always do on defense this season. But it seemed like there was more focus there. I don't see how Cincinnati hangs in this game. I think Jacksonville should have beat them by more than they did. I can only see the Rams in this game.
We're reaching a point, it's a halfway point of the season, Jack, but like when you get a game like this where on paper there's a disparity in talent and it's an out-of-conference game, does that factor into your mind from a total perspective? Do they don't know each other, it's out of conference, lack of motivation from Cincy. What does that do to a total? Do you bump it up a little bit just on the front end?
I would say, if anything, it favors the over. I wouldn't say by much. I wouldn't go crazy with the move, but it'd be like a meaningless game at the end of the year. Not that this is meaningless to these teams, but no, there's the Rams coming off that win. Suppose Cincinnati gets lucky and scores 7-10 points early. Then the Rams have to go on offense the rest of the game to straighten it out. And there's what happens. If the dog can take the lead early, then it really favors the over. But not knowing that before the game, it's difficult to call.
Arizona's at New Orleans. Listen, Arizona, they've been competitive this year. They're actually on a 2-game winning streak. Now, I mean, they win at Cincy, and they beat the Falcons, but you beat who's in front of you. Murray's learning the ropes, makes a lot of good plays. So actually an intriguing team to watch. And this New Orleans team, Jack, is one of the most interesting stories, maybe the best story in the NFL, with Breeze going out. Bridgewater, these guys are just on a dead run right now. And I know the Niners are unbeaten, but I would make New Orleans the favorite to host the NFC Championship game. What were you thinking here?
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. I wouldn't discount the 49ers yet. Here's the thing. We posted no number on this game, nor did anyone else that I saw. Now I see a few 9.5s on board. But here's the thing. The New Orleans media reports that Drew Brees is close to returning, and that there's a chance it could be this week. Now, difference would be Brees out. Okay, 9.5 is a good number, with a total of in the range of 49. But if Brees is in, this game goes to 13.5 with a higher total over 51. So we're waiting till we get the latest media report on whether he's in or out.
Now, that would be interesting. Let me just ask you, if you're hanging a number, that makes sense. If you sit there and say, okay, the drop-off, Drew Brees to Teddy Bridgewater, whatever you're calling it, 4.5, 5 points. But he's still got the thumb. He's still coming back. I get, he should be in shape. It was his thumb. So, but rust is a thing. Would there be a little bit of caution the first game back for Brees? The drop-off normally would be this, but he's been off for 6 weeks, not facing live bullets.
Brees, Sean Payton and Brees would never strike me as the kind that would pull in the reins a little just to be careful. I think they would be sure he was 100% when he came back. Now, you have a good point about the rust, but if this game is 9.5 with Bridgewater in there, the immediate reaction when they heard Brees would be in would definitely go over 10, 11. So 13.5 is probably an overreaction, and 9.5, if he's in there, is too little. So, I don't think they're going to risk health with Brees. If he's starting, he's 100%. outside of the rust. And then I think with his experience, he can shake that pretty easily.
And again, as you watch these games, Oakland is at Houston. Houston having a great season with Deshaun Watson. That was a big game, hard-fought game against the Colts, monster game in their division. And then you get the Raiders. And I'd be so curious, Jack, as you're putting this number up. And Houston's coming off a loss, as are the Raiders. But if you look at the score of that Raiders game at Green Bay, you would think they got killed. That was anything but the case. That was actually a game the Raiders could have won. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot.
They did, and that is often their mode. The big plays were when they had first and goal at the 1, and first Carr had an outside lane to just walk into the end zone, hesitated. Then with pursuit, he tried to dive for the end zone and fumble the ball through. So instead of taking the lead, they're behind. And then there was one play down the sideline where it appeared the receiver might have stepped out of bounds 3 times, and they reviewed it and said he was a touchdown. I don't get it sometimes.
I get it. It's the human nature of you're so close, but be it quarterbacks or wide receivers, how many you see this probably 5, 6, 7 times a year? Guys, bare hands sticking it out, trying to get to the pylon. Sometimes he's hit. A lot of times when they're extended, they just lose the ball and fumble it out of the end zone. Complete game changer.
Oh, it was. Momentum-wise, it just had to dishearten them. They were playing with Green Bay. You're an underdog. You're on the road. You got a chance to take the lead. You don't get that. They go right down and score in a couple plays, and the party's over.
All right, let's go. This is a good one. Carolina and San Fran. And the Niners just keep right on rolling, and Carolina's coming off a bye, and they've got newfound life with a new quarterback.
They do. And as we talked about many times on here, Kyle Allen has been playing very well for them. 49ers undefeated, worked their way through the muck and the mire yesterday to come out with a 9-0 victory. Right now, the 49ers are sitting at a 6-point favorite. As we talked about, this game was 6.5 when we opened it. And actually, it was 5.5, bet up to 6.5. Went down to 6 this morning and back to 6.5. But I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm giving you the game above it. This game opened 6, stayed 6, and now I see 5.5 creeping up. I think that's just the bye factor for Carolina, and this is what we spoke about before. This game would basically be 6, 6.5, and it's probably going to go down to 5.
So let me ask you this question. Cam Newton's healthy. Now, that's going to be the soap opera of all soap operas, how they're going to deal with this. But from the odds maker's point of view, Carolina's won 4 in a row. What would you deal with regarding the Panthers? Allen, Newton. At the beginning of you said, the drop-off, Newton to Allen. What is it right now?
I don't think it's anything right now.
There you go.
However, their dilemma will be Cam Newton is not expected to play this week. But if he comes back and they decide, and they're on a winning streak, the momentum could shift if they go back to Newton. But if they don't start Newton, they're going to have a disharmonious clubhouse. So they're going to be in a tough predicament in a week or 2.
All right, Jack, let's soldier on. And we'll go to the Denver-Indy game. With Denver having a little extra time to prepare for this, having played on Thursday night, and the Colts finding a way.
The Colts are finding a way. They beat Houston yesterday. Indianapolis was coming off the bye. Houston was not. And Houston was coming off a tough game from the week before. This game, we opened 5, and now the game has gone back to where it should have been. This is what we talked about before, too. It was 6.5. It would have been 6.5. We gave Denver extra credit for having the rest and being ready to play, but the public's not buying it. They bet this game right back up to 6.5, where the pure number would be like if there were no other mitigating factors.
Just first blush, and you take a peek at it, and sometimes first impressions are maybe the way to go. But at first blush, I look at the total and think, it seems a little on the high side. I could have seen something in the 40.5, 41 range for a game like this. It just seems like a little higher than I thought it would be.
Well, we opened at 43.5, some small bets up to 44. But I think you're right. Before this game, when this game breaks it's going to go below 44 instead of over 44.
All right, we go to Cleveland to win it. Now, there's a kind of a double-edged sword here, right? I mean, you got the Patriots play a Monday night game, and Cleveland fresh as a daisy.
That's right. And we'll see what happens tonight. Like we talked about the Jets, it could influence the thinking. This is a big number against a respectable team. And I think and Cleveland is a popular team betting-wise. So I think you'll see this number come down. We opened at 11. We're down 10.5. By game time, good showing or not tonight, I don't expect this game to be more than 10.
And then the Sunday night game, on paper, everybody would have been drooling over this. Here's a real challenge for the odds makers. It's Green Bay at Kansas City. Well, for starters, if it was Rodgers and a healthy Mahomes, what would the total have been in this game?
Well, let's see. We're dealing 48 now. I'm going to say it would have been 55, pushing 56.
Wow. So what'd you open here?
We opened Green Bay 3.5. We're up to 4. If this were healthy, you'd probably have Kansas City 3.5. So now, and I think this game will go a little higher by game time. I mean, Matt Moore against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's about as big a difference as you can get between a starter and a backup, I believe.
And then finally, the Monday night football game is Miami and Pittsburgh. I'm looking at this number. I'm doing a bit of a double take, but go ahead, give me the lowdown on what you were thinking here.
We opened 17. We're down to 15. There was a little money from Miami, I guess, a reaction to they're playing well, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh just not being that great a team to be this big a favorite. But as someone mentioned to me yesterday, whoever scheduled this game, did they look at Miami and say, we got to have them on TV on Monday night this year?
I guess. Yeah, you tell me. But I would just say this. The one thing, Pittsburgh, they get a win at the Chargers, and they're flying around, and that was like a home game for them. That was this bizarre deal where it was they were on the road out in California, and it was all Pittsburgh fans. And they win the game 24-17. Like, oh, that defense, they're flying around. And then, Jack, you watch the Chargers. Rivers looks old to me. And, so they don't win the game at Tennessee. So that Pittsburgh win, hey, it's a nice win, but that was like basically a glorified home game for them. Is it an overreaction to the Pittsburgh win? Because, honestly, Miami is bad, and they're going to probably be historically bad. They got one game, I think. They can win the Cincinnati game. So at best, this is probably a one-win football team. But last week, even though it's a bad team they were playing, they rallied. They went for 2. They went for the win. So they narrowly had a chance, missed a chance to beat the Redskins. And I will tell you this. They competed. They really did. They were fired up, and they played hard in the game at Buffalo. And, Mason Rudolph laying 15 to anybody? I don't know.
No, it's difficult. You got, as you said, you have Rudolph returning as a starter. You got James Conner supposed to be much healthier than he was going into the last game against San Diego. They're coming off a bye, and Miami's playing hard. Miami front office may want to dump all the games for that number 1 draft pick, but the coaches and the players on the field, they don't want to go through that embarrassment. They're trying their best. They just haven't been given much to work with. But with this game, I say by game time it's down to 14, but it's still a mismatch.
And wrap it up with this, Jack. As we've reached this point, and it'll be the halfway point for the majority of these teams, who have been the teams you bumped their ratings up the most, and who are the teams that you're, with injury, through injury or whatever, you've had to downgrade the most? Or who are the teams, or maybe the better way to ask it, who are the teams you're still kind of keeping an eye on, saying, boy, one week to the next, they're tough?
Well, I thought San Francisco was perhaps a 9-win team, and they're much better than that. And the team they're playing, Carolina, I thought may have been an 8-win team going into the season, and now they could be in that 9-10 range. The disappointments have been Denver's a big disappointment. Naturally, the obvious Miami and Washington not being competitive at all. The Giants, I didn't think much of them going into the season. There's very few. The Chargers are a disappointment. Chicago Bears are a disappointment. The rest of it, I think Jacksonville's a pleasant surprise. Philadelphia, disappointment. And Buffalo may be the biggest surprise of all.
Yeah, like you mentioned, that Eagles game at the beginning of the season, you probably had the Eagles about a field goal favorite on the road, and now they're catching 1.5 points, and you think it may even go higher.
Right. I mean, I think Buffalo is a competent team. Like you said before, Allen is very focused at the end of the game when he has to do things. If they could get that focus early in the game, they become a much better team.
And wrap it up. The one thing, though, that he's done the last several weeks, he's been more cautious, and he has not turned the ball over. And that if you've got that defense, you can trust the defense and not put them in pickles. They're in every game. So it's a fun thing, man. We're rolling right along the halfway point of the season. He's as good as it gets, our global odds-making expert when it comes to the NFL, Jack. As always, Jack, thank you for doing this. Enjoy the games this week.
We will, and the pleasure was mine. Thank you very much.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.